between the two. At the top are statements that people could say about food, serving guests, and hospitality, and towards the bottom for all of these statements, it's just kind of corrections and shifting the thought process to a more hospitality focus that will make your business more effective. And the bottom line, as you kind of start going through all 8 of these statements, the ones about hospitality talk about the experience from the guest perspective and making it memorable, having an impact, the way you make people feel, and intentionality. So that should be the 4 things that you take away. It should be your guest experience should be memorable. They should feel like what you're doing has an impact. You want to be intentional, and you can have an influence on how you make people feel. Okay, and that is at the heart of hospitality. So long as you're doing those 4 things, you'll be good. I said I'll take a note. I'm gonna wait for folks to finish. You good?
Yes.
All right. Next, so now we're going to talk about what is system building. So system building is pretty simple. At the baseline, you're just making standard operating procedures for any service, task, or your goal is to make things simple. Now, I've seen systems become very complicated and you defeated the purpose. Systems make things simple and they create clarity. All right, so that is just a summary of that. Make things simple and create clarity. Y'all with me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
Kind of just called me out, but it's okay.
I get it though. Sometimes it's necessary, especially when you know who you're talking to.
Well, I think what happens with a person like an overachiever, overthinker, and super detail, and I have ADD, right? And so the complication comes from me like trying to like over explain and make sure that everybody understands from their level of understanding, and like just so there's no questions, concerns, like gray area, anything like that. So
Absolutely.
The complication comes from that.
So that's good that you're aware of that, and this kind of does like a high-level overview of some of those things. I'm gonna circle back to that. So right here we're talking about what are examples of systems. All of these are real-life examples of things that Chick-fil-A has systems for. Order taking, we don't seat guests. I know some of you may do that. Scheduling, HR and payroll, cleaning, audits and reports, catering and delivery, training. I've seen in other businesses training be a nightmare. Sometimes I don't know how people truly know what they're doing. Some people figure it out. We have very thorough training plans that people follow. Okay, well, what happens if they miss a day? Well, here's now how you go about that to try our best to get as much in as you can. Same with cleaning. Some places are interesting once you start walking around in there, but Chick-fil-A, we also have our system for how often we're going to do things like the event hoods, to things like cleaning underneath the counters, inside the fryers. All that stuff is systemized as well, so we know that they're being done. HR and payroll, at one point, it was a hot mess. I don't know how we got people in the door, truthfully. We walked in there and we kind of created more systems to our HR and our payroll systems. And that the same goes right into the one above that with the scheduling. And scheduling is also something that we're working through, creating better systems for it, because right now their system that we have is to not have a system. Our system is to do what we need to do to get the schedule out the week before, and it's not working well with people's availability. So we're creating new systems to figure out how we can make scheduling simple, make it quick, so we can be further ahead. So you should kind of...
I'm sorry. Do you guys use your own internal scheduling system, or do you actually use one of the other software that's available to anyone?
Good question. We were using Hot Schedules.
Okay.
Hot Schedule. Wait 1 second. Yeah, Hot Schedules is like the Chick-fil-A recommended one that you'll see popular with other operators. And we just recently, like a week ago, switched to a different software called Nation. And we switched to Nation a little bit for the scheduling, but also because it has other like messaging and other types of beneficial services that we can use and incorporate all together. And it's making scheduling simple. Like you also can't schedule people outside of their availability on Nation, but you can do that on Hot Schedules on accident, and that happens pretty frequently, especially when I make the schedule. All right. So now that we kind of have an example of what type of things we can use systems for, we're going to go into it on how we're going to do so. These are going to be the simplest ways to explain it. and all the building blocks that you really need. If you know what it is you're trying to make a system for, you're going to describe how they're going to do it, how frequently it's going to get done, who is going to do it, and the last one I shouldn't even included here, but just recognizing that every portion of this has space for improvement and for scaling. So just recognizing like, okay, a system that you make right now may be needed and necessary for your business, but your business can grow and it can change and develop in ways, and you can outgrow your system, so your systems have to change too. Are you good? Oh, you're good. All right.
Thank you.
Of course. So now here's like a little bit deeper dive into all of the separate sections. Going into the what. The questions to ask yourself is, what do you do to serve your guests? So at Chick-fil-A, we provide hospitality and we make chicken. So there's a lot of different systems that we have in the kitchen that look like, how do we build our sandwiches? How are we training our people? And what does that look like? But also, like I said, it's going into the front end. It's like, how do you take orders? We have scripts that our team members can go through, and that's something that we use in training to teach them and to coach them through how to take orders, because you can teach somebody how to do their job and complete tasks, but the question is, are they doing it well? So the systems in our training are helpful, but help us make sure we're doing those things excellently. So now that we know what it is that we're serving our guests, how we serve our guests, we're talking about what are the next thing that needs to happen for it to occur. So now this is kind of where Nina was saying it can kind of get kind of crazy, because we know as business leaders there's a lot that needs to happen on a day-to-day, and sometimes I think we can easily forget, or it can get muddy on who is supposed to be responsible for what. So let's talk about a day-to-day at Chick-fil-A. From the bottom up, you have the trash that needs to be taken out, someone needs to sweep, someone needs to wash some dishes, someone needs to count the cash bag, obviously someone needs to be there to serve the guests, taking orders. The iPads need to be charged if we're using them or we're not taking any orders. And that's not including any administrative portions of the job, such as the scheduling, the payroll. So that's where the system and the clarity comes into play. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail later about how we managed and created the clarity. The next part is the how. So what I would tell you to do is to figure out what you want to make a system for. So what we did is we're thinking through our metrics and what can we do to help our guests feel like we're focusing on intentionality. So that's going to be like the background as I kind of go through these examples. So we made a hyper focus on winning hearts. So we're like, okay, so what system can we do to make sure that me and the team are taking time to be intentional with guests? And so that would be our what. We're trying to be intentional with our guests. So the duties, that looks like the things that we do to serve them. We're taking their order, we're giving them sausage, we're giving them food. Okay, cool. So how are we going to make the team focus and be intentional with the guests? So this is going to be your recipe, your process mapping, where you're going to go through step by step. Also, make sure that you do have these resources and equipment that are listed right here. Checklists, system and processes, templates, decision trees. So this is going to be where you're writing down everything for someone to reference. Okay, so starting from the top with the checklist. When we go through our cleaning systems, the checklist looks like, okay, you're getting under the vent hoods. Are you moving the cups and are you wiping up under there? Are you pulling back the ice cream machine and you're cleaning in there? Removing the trash bin and getting there so you can reference step by step what you need to do.
Is that the decision tree you're talking about?
No, that's the checklist.
Okay.
Yeah. Under that, we have system and processes. This is more so when you're at training phase as well, which is going through and explaining everything that needs to happen in a step-by-step basis. After that, you have templates. Now, we don't necessarily use templates, but I've seen people use templates in any type of job where you may be sending frequent emails, things like that. You can have a template so then your team can refer back to. This is similar to the script that we use for in training to teach our team how to coach and talk through order taking with guests. And I know that you mentioned the decision trees. Decision trees is also good for training, but it's also good to help. It's thought-provoking, because what happens, there are some things that just happen every day at a certain time, and that's very simple to coach somebody on. There are certain things that you need to respond based on the situation. What do I do if someone is here but they're not in uniform? Okay, so if someone's here and they don't have the uniform, unfortunately, you got to send them home. If they're here and you do have an extra name tag, you do have more spare shoes, you have an extra belt, things like that, okay, you can handle that situation differently. What do you do when you send somebody home and you're overstaffed? Well, when someone's not in uniform and you're overstaffed, great, send them home. What happens when you're understaffed and someone is not in uniform? Sometimes sending them home may not be your best option. What else can you do to utilize this person not fully in uniform? They may need to be in the back of the house that day, not guest facing. Hey, they don't have shoes on. Okay, they can't be in the kitchen. That person may just need to move to the front in a stationary position and, pass out the food. So that's like the thought process behind the decision tree.
And that's where a manager or somebody's a reference that's
Yes.
trying to figure out what the next move is if they don't already know that.
Exactly. So that would be like mid-level leaders. Would probably be someone that you're like using a decision tree for.
How is the staff accessing these checklists and things like that? Is it a digital paper format or?
Great question. I know I mentioned we did transition to Nation. The mistake we're making currently is we are not committing to either paper or digital, and so that's what we got to go back and figure out. But that is totally up for you and your business. I found certain things are good for different things. An example of that would be like a transition checklist, like ending one shift, going into another one. That to me is something that needs to be on paper in like a centralized location on the wall. All right, everybody can see this. You're walking by it. It's a constant reminder. But then as we go through, we have a director of the day, and they have a checklist of different things that they need to do. That is something that probably should just be digital and on paper so they know where to find it if they need to. But you can just pull that up on your phone because at that point, higher level leaders should not require the same level of like walking you through, but at the same time, it should still be able to be referenceable. So I would just say it depends on who the system is for. Any other questions about the how? All right, moving to the when, simply cadence. Once again, there are certain things that happen every day at a specific time, multiple times a day, and other things, when we're talking about a turnaround time, happens when something else happens. So let's say I make signs, and I get 4 signs a day, sometimes. And then on Fridays, I don't get any orders. I'm not going to be making signs, so if I had a system and it was just like on a cadence, every 3 hours, start making the sign, what would happen on Friday? Every hour, there would be a sign started, and it would never be finished. So making sure that in our systems, we're accounting for things like that as well. Okay, what starts and what prompts that first one? Is it certain things like this when something needs to end by? With our transition system, you have to be done with transition and ready to start the next shift at the start of that next shift. Whereas something like counting money is more ambiguous. It just needs to be done by the end of the shift. So those are things that you should also be including in your systems. Does that make sense? All right. Whom, obviously, this is going to be the delegation portion. Things need to happen, figuring out what point of the business, who should be doing what. There are certain things that the owner should be doing, and there are certain things the owner should not be doing. There are things team members can do, and there's things that leaders should do. And this is kind of what I was talking about before with the DOD, on the director of the day. We've noticed that our mid-level leaders were taking on a lot of small tasks and things that were important and needed to get done. The challenge that we were recognizing is if we're expecting you to run a good shift and to serve guests well, how much of your time is being focused on serving guests versus all of these random tasks? So that's where delegation comes into play with systems, and that's why it's important in the what phase that you're writing out all the duties, because we did that at one of our director meetings. We had to write it down and everything, and we kept forgetting, oh, what about this? And what about that? Oh, dang, I didn't forget that too. So we recognize our leaders are doing all of this and leading a shift, and that's leading to a lot of lack of focus. So
you guys have a system for aligning people to be maybe best aligned with what their position should be or what's in their natural design?
And that's a good thing too, and that's the last thing that's on the bottom, performance and skill. Certain things, mostly for us, are through your role. Now, as leaders, you need to recognize who is best at what, and that's our job to make sure we're putting people in the best seats.
So it's more so like a person reading and recognizing. I guess I'm basically working on designing certain systems that can kind of streamline people that might not have the ability to discern. So it's kind of like we're working on that. But in terms of like seeing if somebody else is using that system, that might give me like an anchor point to kind of do something better in my hand.
So what trying to get a concrete answer, what we try to do is focus on our training, having very black and white metrics and things. You either know how to do it, you can perform well, or you can't. You're keeping up and you're good in your position and you're following X, Y, and Z and you know how to do it correctly, or you don't. So now what happens when you have the people that are good, like culture pieces, but this person truly is not very fast and he is not bouncing nuggets fast enough? That's, once again, a seat problem, potentially. Okay, maybe you're not good with being in the kitchen and you don't have the urgency you need, but what would it look like to get you and put you in the front and have you guest facing? Because you're good with talking in order, and I want you to take somebody's order. And so those are things at a training level that we have to assist people before just cutting them from our business. But that would be the answer to that. Because everybody in a team member role in the kitchen should all be able to do the same things if they're in the same role. So from there, if it's like, okay, I feel like you're not performing in this role, what options do we have to move you into a different role where you may be succeeding better?
So there's not like a pre-qualifying metric where it's just kind of like you just got to see trial and error, see how they perform.
That would for us, that is your training. So we have our interviews. We have 2 phases of our interviews to gauge whether or not this would be someone that would fit well in our culture and in our business. Beyond that, you will go into training. A very thorough training plan of all of the things you would need to do. So within your interview and the application itself was the first phase of where you would have been placed based on your personal qualifications. And then now is a matter of fact of, are you going to do the job that you were hired to do? If you can't do that, where can we utilize you that's mutually beneficial? And at that point, if we've gone through all the steps of coaching and developing and relocating and reallocating, and you're still not hitting the mark, that person doesn't need to be in your business.
You were thinking more like a skills assessment.
That's part of
Cool.
it. It's like some of what I'm doing is kind of dynamic, but like I have to be super selective about who I'm going to be doing. So like on the front end, I'm doing due diligence. I'm
Yeah.
reading and recognizing so much that it's like it would be nice to have a system that's not solely dependent on
On
me.
you.
Because right now I'm having to do so much that it's kind of like if I'm not involved with it, it can go left real quick. Like, that's
Yeah,
what-
but that's also, not that that's the same thing you're discussing, but that's why we have 2 phases of the interview. So it's not just, okay, well, Alan said they were good and we was going to see how it goes. So then at least, okay, we had 2 people that both talked to this person 15, 20 minutes and collectively thought this was a good place for this person. The 2 of them can come together, collectively discuss what other options are available, and then from there they move forward with the training.
Or
So.
like a team, like some people hire.
Exactly.
The second process is 5 people.
Yeah.
When you say DOD, Director of the Day, is that for your mid-level leaders, or is that something, like how do you decide who, is that just a team member, or is that the manager, supervisor, shift leader, or something like that?
That is like one of our highest levels of leadership, the director level. So at that point, we were developing our leaders, and our mid-level leaders were not at a point where they were holding and supporting the business on their own, so they had babysitters. So that was the DOD, and so that person was just scheduled on the shift to be the DOD. I don't know if this is something that you guys may run into, especially with like food service. We want to make sure we're focusing on food safety. So I've been at other restaurants where there may be 3 managers and 2 directors. So there's 5 leaders and the rest of the team members and trainers, but how many of those people are focused on food safety or what's actually happening? Nobody. Okay, so now the food safety inspector walks in and all the things are going wrong because the quickest way to starve a dog is to tell more than one person to feed it. So for systemizing, that was part of the thought process with even incorporating a DOD. This is a specific person, and they're like the go-to person for the entirety of the shifts and the day part, and all the problems, food safety, and all those things would be delegated to this person to make sure it's either happening, being delegated, or just like being corrected. So that's how it's been
So that person runs the
predetermined.
entire shift. It's just like a shift manager. Is that my
There
definition
would
of
be
that,
a
or-
DOD, and then there would be 2 shift managers, one in the front and one in the back. So the DOD is overseeing the entirety of the store from like a food safety, food quality, and guest experience perspective.
Like an MOD, but on a, like a manager.
Exactly.
Manager on duty, but like a
Yep.
little higher.
Yeah, they're overseeing the 2 people who are running the shifts because they should be doing that together. And that was something that was necessary for us because our leaders were not at a point to where they were making all of these decisions on their own.
Can I ask like what decision, real quick, like what type of decision the DOD would have to make that a mid-level supervisor manager person could not make?
At the time, they were not doing things like having coaching conversations with people. They weren't doing things like sending people home. There wasn't a whole lot. At one point, the managers were struggling to count money accurately, so we had to like retrain them on that. But remind you guys, a lot of our leaders are like high school students, and so we're realizing that the basic tasks and skills that we had are not being passed down to this next generation.
Yeah.
Also remind you that they did. I'm not even trying to be funny. We had a whole conversation about it. But they go to high school during COVID. So a lot of them have like 3 to 4 years of their high school just gone. They didn't even have that experience. So it was like the same like mental capacity, not to be funny, of like an 8th or 9th grader.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So at this point, how do we handle that? Because you should be able to know when you're sending somebody home, and y'all should know how to count money. You're not counting to 1,000. Like it's just like so that was why we implemented this system of like a higher accountability. And so yeah, it's not like specific things crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
No, I'm finding that they can't count. No, and I'm being so serious. They cannot count.
Yeah, it's the counting.
Yeah,
So,
it's bad.
just real quick, when it comes to the logistics of the DoD, like high level, like what are they just like sitting back in the corner
That's what
like
I'm trying to
watching,
figure out.
and they say, hey, come here, like let me show you something, or like what's the logistical implementation of that?
That's a great question. And so this goes more so into what's it called, expectation setting, which is part of our system. But once again, everybody that's DODing is a director level. So at a director level, I don't need to go through guest experience. You know what that means. You know what our expectation is or not. And your job is to problem solve and to ensure those things are happening. So there are specific times, our peak hours, are the DOD should, I don't want to say be in a position, but the expectation is that you are supporting the team. At a director level, you should be able to figure out where your support is best needed. If it's like we're super busy and people are holding on things and you are sweeping, that may be an issue. But once again, you don't need to explain that to a director. So that's basically what they look like, coaching the team, coaching the leaders, overseeing and verifying that things are happening, not just blindly trusting them, but also just being there just to be aware of certain things. So now on slower days, in our like lower hours, the DOD may be, they shouldn't be in the office doing something, but they may be, let's say, in the food court doing some admin or running down to the office to complete a task and then come back up. So you have like flexibility with the
So
scheduling.
kind of floating, just looking,
Exactly.
seeing, and assessing.
Yeah.
what's happening.
But like I said, that was in a season where we needed to develop our mid-level leaders. So so like what happens when these decisions are needing to be made? They don't know how to do that themselves, and you don't need to make that decision, but sometimes you need to be there for coaching conversations and things like that, and to help them walk them through that decision, things like that. What happens when problems occur, or like if there's in the middle of the shift and all of the screens randomly turn off. So at a director level, to be able to oversee the execution and the problem solving of things like that. Yeah. Does that answer your questions about the DoD? Yeah. All right. Last thing is improvements. I went over this before. Make sure you know that the system is not going to stay the same 9 times out of 10. Once you implement a system, or even while you're in the process of creating a system, think through other ways that you can make it better, or what other things may be challenges. Have specific metrics that you can use to be like, how do I know that this is winning? What does success look like? So for hospitality, we do have those metrics. Speed of service, order accuracy, overall satisfaction. Okay, so that can tell us that when we see a dip in overall satisfaction and food quality, that tells us that we probably need to have more conversation on what things are happening in the kitchen. When we start seeing order accuracy go down and OSAT, incentive and friendliness going down, what is our team not doing on the front end when they're interacting with our guests? So those are some of the specific metrics that we use to know how we need to modify and to like what address it. What
You
part?
said order accuracy. You just gave a list of like.
Order accuracy. I was talking about, what was I talking about?
Metrics,
I'm
KPIs,
sorry.
metrics, your KPIs.
There were like 2 separate parts. Okay, I got you.
Dipping the food. You said
So
that was
in the kitchen, as far as like a food quality perspective, it may be like order, that could be overall satisfaction, taste of food, and temperature. And I guess order accuracy. But then in the front of the house, it would be order accuracy, attentive and friendly,
Attentive.
overall satisfaction, and I guess that would be it.
Okay.
Now, same question. How do you guys track your KPIs and your metrics? Like, what would you recommend to keep up with those?
That is for us is more so of a delegation thing, because what we do is we have different systems that we use that will as the guests take their surveys, it'll populate all right there. So that is the one metric that Chick-fil-A looks at that's has nothing to do with our input. So we're looking at those guest surveys, but then Chick-fil-A also has secret shoppers. And so we love secret shops because they know what they're looking for. The guests have an idea of how they feel, and that's separately valid, but the secret shops are going to say that they were trained to look for things. So for us, we have a director that will look at the secret shops. All of us should be overseeing this every time. It's like twice a month. And then every week we go through the CEMs. And then from there, we're comparing them and figuring out, like, okay, where do we need to focus? And so that one director is, like, over there talking to us and figuring out, like, and we'll set the goal. And then from there, as a team, we're attacking those together. So that's, like, how we utilize our KPIs. And then from there, we have a newsletter that will go out to the team because they don't want to be checking their phones, which is crazy because they'll check it for anything else. So, and this same newsletter will be one time a week where you know this is all the information that hopefully you'll need beyond something very urgent that needs to go out. And that will be like, okay, guys, this is going to be what our weekly focus is. And here's like a handful of ways how you'll be able to help us achieve that.
Question, Alan. How often do you all schedule secret shoppers?
Twice a month.
They happen twice a month, and they are random, and we don't know who they are. So,
Think about it. Think about this.
yeah. So that's something new that Chick-fil-A started. And I'm going to tell you, we've gotten
It's the best.
It is.
lettuce wrong every time. Every single time. Another thing is on our
Lettuce?
secret shops, lettuce.
Lettuce on a sandwich.
Yep, they've been putting way too much, not enough lettuce, no lettuce at all. The Syrians it's crazy. The craziest part, our hospitality scores have been embarrassing.
Really?
Yep, but like I said, the guests, they don't really know. They know they want to hear you say my pleasure, but they're not like tripping if you don't say that. But also at the same time, they know they have a good experience when they come to Chick-fil-A. So even if they have a mid experience with you one time, it's not going to make a difference. But now when you go through these secret shops, okay, well, in August, you only say my pleasure. You didn't look at the person. You didn't smile. And September, you did the same thing. This person didn't even call out the name. You never asked them if their order was correct. And you just go all the way through. We are not doing as well consistently because these are like 4 separate months where every time y'all miss the entirety of the core 4. And that's like the basic level expectation of hospitality at Chick-fil-A. And we have not done that. And yeah, they're random guests. But if you're not doing this with the secret shopper, what are the odds you're doing that with every other guest but not them?
Yeah.
And that's like the conversation we're having with our team.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. In terms of, it's kind of like just like I'm curious of your thought on this performative customer service that I feel like people want in order for them to say they've gotten good customer service. Do you have any feedback on? It's one thing to just be nice, but I'm wondering. I feel like we're entering or have entered the space of we want people to tap dance and to do a whole minstrel show in order for them to feel like they've gotten good customer service. And I just would like if you could speak to that in terms of like Chick-fil-A's. I mean, it seems very basic, just like, hey, how you doing? What's your order? You know, my pleasure. It's just nice. But is there a performative aspect that we're expecting in customer service and hospitality that we're supposed to do as a provider of that?
Now that's a great
I got an
question.
answer for you too for that too, because I think a lot of times people want to be connected, especially if they want to be connected with the owner or the manager. They want to be known that they come here on the regular. So if you have like a reward system or a point system, hi, how you doing? Thank you for coming in. What's your name? Have you been with us before? You put it in. Oh, you was just here last week. You getting the same thing. You want some more whipped cream on your coffee? Whatever you selling, they want to know. They like, oh, you know what my favorite order is? Like, I was here last week. That kind of stuff,
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Chick-fil-A does do that too. If someone has a bad, like if they call corporate and and they have the app, it will show up on on the screens that person is like, take good care. So now you know, like, okay, this is somebody you need to be like really intentional with. But that's something that I know that I personally have been trying to work through myself, especially as I went from a team member and working my way up to a director where I am now. I am someone that at one point I did not say my pleasure. And that may sound crazy, but I'm like, I don't talk like that. I know everybody else does. To me, that's not the equivalent of being disrespectful or not being polite. So I feel like they'll get the same level of service. Some point I realized that people do want to hear you say my pleasure, and that is also part of my job. So I went back to saying it. But I also, and this has a lot to do with how I do my role now, trying to find the balance between who is Alan and what is true to me and what is professionalism. And then the line between black people and then professionalism. So, and I know all of y'all can probably relate to me when I say those things. And so I do think that there are the best analogy I can use is like when you're talking to your mom and you're talking to your dad. You're not being a different person, but you're recognizing a level of honor that needs to be in place. When you're talking to your grandma, okay, I'm probably not cursing around my grandma, but same thing, okay? Other than that, same conversation. Why? Because there's honor there. Kind of like when you're like at church in any religious setting and you're talking to God. That there's a level of honor there. So you're not changing who you are, you're not being performative, but just adapting and recognizing where it's due. And I feel like that's like a good way to recognize with the guests. And I feel like a lot of black people sometimes do that too. I feel like sometimes I've not received the best service from us because they feel like, oh man, you whatever, you good. I can talk to you any kind of way and you'll understand where I'm coming from because you're one of us. But then they'll go and then they'll be polite and professional when they're talking to somebody else. So I think it's all of that is relevant, but just knowing how to find the balance in a way that is true to you would be my answer. So I don't really have a specific answer, but that's been something that I know I personally have been thinking through a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, but also that's like me wearing this shirt right now. I feel like that was crazy, but I'm like, the sun is out, it has some personality, and I'm gonna go for it. So
Let's go.
I was thinking that Chick-fil-A had done a great job of one, you're outside, so that's already different than a standard fast food restaurant.
we're outside all 2026, just so you know.
That's part of your service, right? You're greeting me at my car. It's not like I need you to order for me. I can speak it through the mic, but you're there ordering for me on the thing, right? And then it's the name. Like if you go to Wendy's, they don't need your name to place your order. So I feel like Chick-fil-A has always had these signature pieces that make your customer experience not performative, but like
personable.
Intentional. And because we've come to expect that intentional service from Chick-fil-A, it helps us to kind of like know what the standard is, and that consistency makes the experience good. You're not doing anything great and extraordinary. It's just consistent. It's intentional. You know my name. People are relatively kind, I would say. So it kind of just makes up for it.
Yeah.
That was just my take on what you guys offer.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that we tell the team all the time. What you don't know is that the guests do know what to expect, and they're gonna tell me every time that that's not what they get. And so like I said, part of my role has a lot to do with like dealing with guest complaints, and some of the complaints are wild. But at the same time, I'm just like, you get to know your team because I work with them. So I'm like, you know what? That is exactly what we're doing. That is exactly what we're not doing. Yeah, see, exactly. Oh, Kyle wasn't smiling again. He probably was being rude. I know him. So it is all kind of things. And so it's like, okay, now that I know that, how can I coach you? And how do we move about that? Okay, so I know that you may not have been having a good day, but this is kind of like what the feedback is. And so on a personal level, no, I don't think what you did was wrong. Yeah, that person was kind of being aggressive. I don't think the way you responded was disrespectful. I just don't think that that was the best way that we want to represent the brand. And so that's kind of like the conversation that I have. There's one time I feel like I failed because I was there on a Friday and the guy had an order wrong and he was mad. The next Tuesday he came in and I had my back to the situation. And I could hear him like getting upset and I'm like, oh, I feel like I know what's happening. And he said it. Oh, I was here the other day. My order was also wrong. And I'm hearing him describe it. I'm like, oh, I know what this is. This man is huge, by the way. He's like this tall. He's huge. And he's like just talking very like loudly and directly at this team member. And so he says something to the team member. And the team member is just like, okay, well, like, hold on. Like, this is crazy. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, hold on. I don't want a problem. I'm just saying you came at me this way. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, you were kind of being like aggressive. At this point, I'm like trying just not to be in it for real. And I'm like, okay, maybe he can turn it around. it did not get any better from where that was. And I was also not having a good day, which is why I'm just like, I can't say nothing out of worse than what he's about to say. So I'm going to let him do it. And not too long later, oh, well, I want to speak to a manager. And at that point, I was already taking off my gloves. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And I was talking to the dude, and he was just yelling and whatnot because I allowed it to go on too long. And at that point, I'm just like, no, you really are acting ridiculous. But I didn't say that to him. So at that point, I'm like, what can I do to make him leave? So I just like, he wanted a refund and wanted fries. I gave him fries, and I just kind of gave it to him. And he was like mad at me for my response or whatever. Because I was like, okay, what can I do for you? Sorry this happened. Give me 1 second. Let me fix it. And I fixed it. Here you are, sir. And I think what he wanted was for me to say that homeboy was wrong.
Yeah. They want that valid.
And most of the time I do. In that situation, I truly didn't feel like he was. Because what you look like coming and yelling at somebody. Because I was like getting like intimidated just from overhearing the conversation. It was very overstimulating. Because you had him who was like loud. And then you got the other like, you know, the wrong team member to talk to this person. And I'm just like, oh, don't want to be this person.
Yeah.
I say all that to say, like, there are days as leaders, I also feel like, okay, what if I should have been the one to be like, hey, bro, like, I need to, like, pause, whatever, but I don't want my team to feel like people can come in there and talk to them any kind of way. And I don't think that his response was wrong, but that doesn't mean that after that, I can't come back to you and be like, hey, bro, are you good? If you're good, I'm good. I didn't want you to know, here's how we both could have handled a situation like this together in a way that would have, like, oh, because I was telling him, remember anything that you're saying, there is a sea of people behind you that's overseeing the conversation. So at that point, yeah, he was being rude to you. I can't say anything else in your defense because there's also people now watching my response to that interaction. Mm-hmm. So that's like the background coaching that, you know, I've seen with our team. Because people at Chick-fil-A will take the hospitality and they recognize it to be that, and they get offended sometimes when they don't get that, which is fair because they think that's what they're paying for. So yeah, I hope that was entertaining.
Question, Alan. Do you guys, in any of your training on employee level or manager level, use regional hospitality at all, or have you guys ever in your history that you know of?
At a director/owner level,
Okay.
there's that type of training, and at our store, we're working to like disseminate that information down to the team members, and that should be replicated in our training and things like that. Yeah. Are y'all any more questions on this stuff?
You do this for every task, you're saying? You do?
Absolutely.
Okay. Every system you want to build, you go through this.
Yeah, we also recently got selected for a second store in Royal Oak, so it'll be opening March 26th. So
Who's opening that one? Is
the
it-
same operator, same
Oh, the
owner.
same operator.
Yeah, so we got a leadership team and we divided it in half. We don't have DODs anymore. So now we have MODs because the same leaders that we were like babysitting before are now in a place where they can take the DOD role. So that's exciting. What was I talking about? Oh, we were talking about the systems. The point I was making is basically the reason that we do all of this stuff is because you can get it and you can replicate it. So now that we have this new store, what they want to know is on the topic of scaling, how are you going to run your business? Great. I can give you all of our systems, and here's how we're going to do everything you could potentially have a question for. I can talk to you about our scheduling, our hiring, cleaning, staffing. I can talk to you about how we're going to make a sandwich, how we're going to restock, how we're going to transition shifts, how we're going to train leaders, team members, trainers.
Have there ever been any things you had to, I guess, edit or recalibrate when it comes to opening in areas that the culture is so different, where you're like, okay, these particular steps or systems that we have don't work here. We gotta like revamp something.
Are you asking like specifically about opening a new location?
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't do that, but Chick-fil-A corporate is hyper aware of those things.
Okay.
The example is every Chick-fil-A in Michigan, because Michigan has a very we're undersaturated. There we go. We're very undersaturated. So like at McDonald's, you have one in the market.
Oh,
So
and
like
Chick-fil-A is
yeah.
unsaturated. Okay.
In Michigan, because you know, like at McDonald's, you have like two at a corner, whereas at this point with Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A is over there, it'd be like a million people.
But I'm telling you, it's to the point where adding new Chick-fil-A's is supportive because it gives operators more capacity to actually breathe and do things. So we have like another 20 years before market saturation even potentially becomes an issue. This new store that's opening in Royal Oak does not have a drive-thru, so that's very depressing. But
Where is the location?
14, I mean, excuse me, yeah, is by the hospital. 13 in Woodward.
Oh, that's
No
good.
drive-through?
It does not have a drive-thru. Yeah, let me tell you. So we were really fighting about that. We were like, if we need to, we'll put some cones out there and we'll start walking people through there. We make our own drive-thru. But that is like the type of research that Chick-fil-A does to try and figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. I don't know how they came to this conclusion, but they're going to make a new dining format for this Chick-fil-A. It's going to be like table service. Like you're going to walk in, be seated, someone's going to come to your table, serve you.
Dwarf house, perhaps?
What was that?
Like a dwarf house of the north, perhaps?
Yes. But this is a
It
dwarf
sounds
house.
Like a dwarf house, which is like a real specific.
I can't hear you say the
A
word.
dwarf house, which
Oh,
is like.
dwarf house.
Yeah.
That was the first original Chick-fil-A back in 1967. So it's around today. It just continued to like renovate it, and they have like a bunch of specific food items that you can't get anywhere else. But they also have terrible service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come and sit down.
So that would be the answer to your question. So Chick-fil-A corporate is like on the back end, and they do that type of stuff for us. But obviously, as I'm not a native to Michigan, but the people and like the owners are all typically native to where they're at. So they would know the area more so to know what works and what doesn't work. And so we have to like to the area. An example of that would be like having a drive-through, but recognizing what would go well is a curbside, because of this hospital back there. We're also looking at getting